dedicated to the history of the courts in Fresno and the Central Valley. For some of our younger audience who might be watching this later on, this may be the first time you are hearing about the courts. So just a little background. In 1965, Jose Soria, also known as Mama Jose, proclaimed herself the Empress of San Francisco and laid the foundation for the formation of the Imperial Courts de San Francisco. This would soon lead to the founding of imperial courts across the country. Now known as the International Imperial Court System, also known as the International Court System, is one of the oldest and largest LGBT+ organizations in the world. It's a grassroots network of nonprofit organizations, each having a separate court, that work to build community relationships for equality and raise money for charitable causes. Through the production of annual balls, fundraising events, most importantly, coronation. Members work together to raise funds and organize events. Titles are bestowed to individuals by their court members. These titles, such as Duchess, Duke, Prince, Princess, hold within them responsibility and leadership. The most important of these titles being Emperor and Empress, who are elected into this position and serve a year. Today, the International Court System has over 65 chapters in the United States, Canada, and Mexico, making us the second largest LGBTQ organization in the world. The courts have a very important history here in Fresno in the Central Valley. The Imperial Dove Court de Fresno, Madera is the oldest and longest running LGBTQ+ organization in Fresno and in the Central Valley, and has served countless communities in raising charitable funds, mentoring LGBTQ communities, and creating beautiful pageantry. We are honored here today to have the founder of the Imperial Dove Court, Jessie 1 and 4, also known as the Absolute Dove Empress. We are also honored here to have another founder of an Imperial Court, the Sequoia Empire of Visalia and Tulare Counties, Emperor Aldana. The Sequoia Empire lasted for several years in Visalia and raised money for important causes, most importantly AIDS and HIV. In addition, we are very much honored to have our current reigning members of the Imperial Dove Court, Emperor 49 Christopher II, and Empress 49 Venus de Carlo. I love the title of your court, which is the Court of Whiskey, Integrity, and Tequila. Amazing. So with that, I'd like to first start with our founders and talk a little bit about your involvement in history. So I'm going to first direct my questions to Jessie. Could you first share with us how you were initially introduced to the courts?
Well, it's a long, involved story, but I won't make it that long. When I was working in San Francisco as a professional female impersonator, I ran into Jose Soria, Mother Jose, and we became fast friends. And this is prior before she actually started the International Court System. But she was working on it even at that time when I met her. And she always told me, says, Just, if you ever get back to Fresno and you leave San Francisco, I want you to start a court in Fresno. So when I finally got to back to Fresno in 1963, I remember what you told me, and actually next month, November, this organization is going to be 50 years old, because the first coronation was held in November 1973. That's a long time ago.
Amazing. What was your motivation for the Imperial Dove Court, and what was your vision for it?
Very much aligned with San Francisco's way of doing things. Even though I started the court here in Fresno in 1973, and I did it the legal way. I registered the titles with the city clerk of Fresno, but I was also following bylaws of San Francisco, keeping guidelines with their bylaws. For many years, I followed and strictly enforced bylaws, modified, of course, San Francisco's to fit our needs. So my feeling for doing it was because I remember when Mother Jose told me so many years ago to always say, Just, when you get back to Fresno, start a court. So my motivation was to do something for the community, to give us a platform to excel and negate all the negativity that gay people were suffering. So that was my basis.
As an Imperial mother, which you are, how has that impacted your life? You have mentored so many empresses and so forth. How has that impacted your life?
Well, to tell you the truth, at this stage of my life, I think about 1973 and said, why did I do it? Because I always thought, once I finished working and stuff, that I would have some privacy, But see, when you become a public persona, you have to forget about all that. So it's affected my privacy. But I also had the great pleasure of working with tremendous emperors and empresses, 50 years worth here in Fresno. And to tell you the truth, some of them have been excellent, some of them have been mediocre, but I always give them my thanks, all of them, because they gave up a year of their lives, in some cases 2 or 3 years of life, to rule as emperor and empress. So for that, they have my ultimate gratitude, so that's where we stand.
And what would you like to say are some of the more beautiful aspects of the court and also being a mother for so many?
The camaraderie. That says it all, because I've made friends within my own family in Fresno, lifelong friends, and as being as their mother, some of them refer to me as mother. Most of them, whenever I pick up my phone, whatever, he says, hi mother, how you doing? Which I never thought I'd reach that, At first when they did that, I thought it was like an insult, but it's not. It's a reverence to me, in my title, whatever. So I kind of like that now. Now that I'm 82 years old, I kind of like that, the fact that they show me so much respect. Even with my current emperor and empress, it's always Mother Jessie or whatever. They're always checking up on me. My dear friend Tiffany Taylor, J, Empress 727, continues and how are you doing, girl, and blah 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 and all this, So, and some others that check on me. I think it's wonderful, So I'm dear to some, and not to all. Let's get truthful here, There's some I wish they wouldn't call me at all, but but I always give them my respect. I always give them respect because they did so much for me, giving me a year of their lives. And for that, like I said, they have my ultimate respect.
Thank you. I'm going to get back to you, but I would like to switch to Emperor Eldania. Could you share, similar to what I asked for Empress Jessie, what was your initial introduction to the courts and what attracted you to it?
Well, I really wasn't attracted to it at first because when I was living in San Jose in the 70s, I was involved with the San Jose court, and I was Imperial Crown Prince too. The founding of the Grand Reina Rachel of San Jose, and it was just, for me, it took a lot of our time, because at that time I had a relationship and it made it difficult. But then I moved to Visalia because my lover at that time, her and we had split up. So I moved to Visalia, and I was working in Visalia, was minding my own business, when some of my friends came to me and they said, hey, Elsie, Joe Victorino would like to talk to you. And I said, I don't know who Joe Victorino is. And they said, well, he just opened a gay bar in Farmersville. And I was shocked, to tell the truth. Farmersville is out in the boonies, really. So I went to go visit Joe Victorino, and he told me he knew me from that day of the Girl of the Golden West, and he wanted me to see if I could, be interested with him. He wanted to start at a court, in Tulare County. And he asked me if I knew anything about the courts. He said, "Do you know anything about the Fresno court?" I says, "Yeah, I know some." I said, I even know some people there. And he said, well, he says, "How do you feel about, starting a court here in Visalia? We'll dub each other Emperor and Empress." He said, "I always wanted to be Empress. I always wanted to dress up," because he had never done it before. So, and in the meantime, he wanted me to, since he was brand new at the High Chaparral opening his business as a gay bar, he also wanted to see if I could draw in, the gay community in there. So I told him I would do my best in that part, and I said, "Let me think about, Emperor and Empress." So we had another meeting again, and I'll never forget this date, June 20th, 1980. I says, "Yes, I will do it with you, and I said, how are we gonna start this, And he says, "Well, first I'll dub you as Emperor. What name do you want to use?" And that's when Aldana was born. And then I dubbed him as Empress Tatiana, and we decided we would be co-founders. Well, he knew quite a few people in Porterville. We recruited people that were business people, and we got a board together. And then I did, at that time, Mona and Bennett, what was his first name? Doug Bennett, were Emperor and Empress, and I had contacted them, and also who helped me out was Tiffany. Empress Tiffany just had stepped down, and I seeked her advice, and I told her what was happening, and that's how we started the Imperial Sequoia Empire, the Tulare and Kings County. And with Fresno's help, and we adopted Fresno's bylaws. And of course, we did some amends to our needs. And Fresno supported us in every event we had. We started traveling. What I can remember, we went to Modesto, Santa Rosa, San Francisco, down south, Santa Monica, Orange County, throughout the state of California. And we were successful, we were strong, and I started liking it. But of course, since we were new, it was difficult. We had our ups and downs. And the Visalia was a small community, but we established ourselves with some businesses. They got to know us, the community got to know us, and they supported us. And by the time we were in our third year, we were getting strong, until we came across some difficult times.
I think something that's really interesting about the Sequoia Empire is that, yes, it was co-founded with an emperor and an empress, but so much of it has been led by an emperor. And I want to sort of ask you about, as a woman, as an emperor, how was that experience of not only leading a court, but also navigating the court system that's very much, in many ways, dominated by men?
It's all about the Empress, huh?
We love our empress.
Oh yeah, I respect all empresses. I have respect for everyone. But yes, it was very difficult for me because being a gay woman, and it's always been dominated, by males, even though they wear a dress, But it was very difficult. But I did the best I could. I respected everyone, and to me, you get things done better with kindness than anything else. And to me, I have 5 principles, Number 1, it's respect, Number 2, kindness. Number 3, diversity, Number 4, love. And the fifth one, I just forgot. Senior moment. But you know, we all need to stay together. If you have those things, we stay together, things fall into place. And even though I had difficult times, everything fell into place and I had the support. When we had a function in town or out of town, everyone came together and we did it. And we had fun, and it was successful. We were strong for the first, I'm gonna say we were strong all the way up to reign 12, you know. And it was good. And those that could travel out of state, they did a good job, and they put us on the map. And of course it's very costly to all of us. It's costly. You have to be able to succeed in that, and it's hard, you know, it really is.
So sadly, the Sequoia Empire is no longer active, but I just wanted to give you an opportunity, and we'll get back to everything else too, but right here to share some aspects about the Sequoia Empire that you would like others to know, some things that you were very proud of that you did.
What I'm proud of is locally, we raised money. Of course, back in the 80s, it was AIDS. So I can't recall right now which organizations we helped in AIDS, but later on, Hope Incorporated from Porterville, which dealt with AIDS patients, we helped them quite a bit, and I have letters of appreciation from them. Every time if there was an investiture or a ball of some kind, the community supported us, you know. And at that time, they believed in the court system and they believed in their community, and they did their best to support the Imperial Sequoia Empire. And we had fun, and everybody respected each other, helped each other, you know, whether they liked you or not, but they were there. They were there for everyone, and that is, I like that. That is good. I wish everybody would be like that all the time. Every organization that exists here in the Central Valley should be supported, and everyone should appreciate every organization because they're doing what's good for them.
Wise words. All right, let's go into talking and introducing our current emperor and empress. So I'm going to go first with you, Christopher. Share a bit about your involvements first with the courts and how you got involved, and yeah, start with your story there.
I was first exposed to the court when I turned 21 back in 1987. The winter of 87 into the spring of 88, I started going to the bars here in Fresno. I grew up in Tipton. There wasn't anything for a young gay man to do in Tulare County, so you had to go to Fresno or Bakersfield, and I just gravitated to Fresno. And I remember the first bar I went into, they were having a drag show, and I was a little uncomfortable at first because it was just different for me, being a Catholic male Hispanic, growing up in a small community. I never had seen anything like that. So I go into this bar and they're doing this drag show, and I see people walking up giving them dollar bills, like, what's this all about? I have no idea. So then I went back a couple weeks later and they were talking about the Imperial Dove Court, and like, oh, that's interesting. Well, they didn't have Google back then, so you couldn't sit there and Google it. And so I relied on the newspaper at that time. I can't remember the name of it, but the gay newspaper that was published monthly, and they always had articles on there about the court, and that's how I kept up with the court. I never got involved back then. It wasn't until reign 41. The person running for emperor at that time, Robert Lujan, I met him at a New Year's Eve party, and he invited me to coronation. And he was telling me and my husband about it. I'm like, yeah, sure, we'll go. Why not? and we went to Coronation 41, and we had a blast, and we just connected with people, and ever since then, for the past 8 reigns, I've been involved, and I never thought getting involved that I would be in this role. It wasn't anything I desired because I'm not an entertainer, I'm not a performer. I don't wear the flashy costumes, I'm just me. I'm just an average Joe, and I make it work, and everyone would always tell me, you'll be in for one day. It's like, oh no, that's not my thing. I was always behind the scenes type of person. But as it slowly, I got more and more involved, and as the years progressed, there was a change in my heart and a desire that I had to fulfill. And now I'm here today, working alongside this beautiful Empress that I have in my life.
So what are, so ultimately, what motivated you to run? Like, what was the thing that you wanted to do, and what do you want to do as emperor in this position?
The thing that motivated me the most, and it's a hard balance, is I really wanted to be out in the community and a part of the community, and not just in Fresno. Because Fresno, we call it the Imperial Dove Court of Fresno, but our realm is so huge. It goes from Madera all the way to Bakersfield, Hanford. It's such a huge realm. And trying to balance those community events with the coronation out-of-town events that you go to, you don't want to dismiss the coronations because those people will eventually come back to Fresno and help support you, but you also don't want to ignore your local community events. And Venus and I pride ourselves in that we've been able to get out to more community events. There are some things that we just can't be a part of because we're all committed to something else for the court. So my goal has always been to keep the community at the front of everything we're doing. And yes, it's nice to go out of town and go to coronations. If I had my way, I would never go to coronation. I would just stay here in Fresno, Visalia, Bakersfield, and do everything there because those are the people we're helping the most. But that's not how it works, and so it's just trying to find that balance.
So Venus,
Hi.
how did you get involved in the courts?
So it was during Reign 45. My really good friend Miss Melody was reigning as Empress. So I just started by attending her events. Like I was there for her screening. So as she became Empress, I got more involved. I ended up joining her top 5 towards the end because some of the girls that she had weren't able to fully commit. So she brought me into her top 5, and then during that reign, I ran for Miss Central, or Miss Gay Fresno at the moment. It was still Miss Gay Fresno. So I did that pageant, and then from there I just kept on getting involved. Then my other friends started becoming Empresses, so I started becoming part of their top 5s, and then I went from just being like number 5 to being ICP. And then now here I am as Empress, because it's like Chris says, you start and then everybody starts telling you, oh, you're gonna be Empress, you're next, and then I had a goal. My goal, I was gonna try, when I finally realized like, oh, I am gonna be Empress, but I wanna do 50th. I was like, I wanna be the 50th Empress. Yeah, that didn't happen. People had other plans for me.
So your story, Venus, is so much about being a part of other LGBTQ organizations such as Rainbow Pride, the LGBTQ youth group, and then slowly coming into the IDC. And so many of the people you worked with or have been mentored with were former court members,
Yes.
former emperors and empresses, such as our late and great Jeffrey, who was Emperor 26. And I would just love to ask you, as somebody who was mentored by, not necessarily directly in the IDC first, but mentored by people who were very much emperors, hold titles, all of that, how did they teach you about leadership and community service?
Okay, so I just remember the first time I went to group with Jeff Robinson. It was my last day of high school. After that, it was a Friday, and then my friend Rachel lived in Tower, and she's all like, there's this youth group for gay youth. She's like, you should come. So I went, and I remember, so that's when I started getting involved with we would do. I remember the youth group would be involved in charge of like the concession stand, a Real Pride, which is funny because Real Pride's happening now. And then from there, I just kept on getting involved, volunteering more, and then it was nice because when I met Jeff, I didn't know he was emperor, so it's crazy to see where I am now.
How do you see your leadership and mentorship coming? How are you mentoring or leading, or how do you see yourself as a mentor or leader?
You know, it's funny because like I don't see myself like that, but then I'll talk to people and people are like, I look up to you, this and that. And I'm like, because it's funny because I see myself a lot younger than I am. Like I'm 32, but I
We're all
still see
guilty of
myself
that.
as a teenager. So when I get these messages from people or people like look out to me for advice on how to get involved, I'm still like, well, I'm still learning, but it's still surreal to see myself as a role model in a way. I'm still getting used to it.
Absolutely. I'm going to get back to both of you. I'm going to go back to our founders to talk about, because one thing that both of you share very much in common is that prior even becoming to the court system, you were both entertainers and very amazing performers. And I just want to talk a little bit about how performing has influenced your interaction of the court and just as you as performers, because both of you are very fine performers. So I guess the question I want to ask you is, how has performing played into your life, and also how you have led the courts? And we'll start with Jesse. And then we'll go
I
to
was
you.
waiting.
You're both waiting. Sorry, I didn't designate.
There's
We'll
two
start
of
with
us
you.
here.
Well, you both can start. Like, you can talk. Go for it.
Well, actually, performing, because I did it for so long professionally, I was lucky. There was a gay bar here in Fresno called the Orange Ogre, and that's why I first started performing. But I actually did it on a dare. I did. I was attending some classes, but anyway, some of my friends said, you know what, Joss? He says, at parties when you come here, sometimes you imitate Barbra Streisand. Why don't you do it on stage? I said, well, I never thought about doing that, but anyway, I had a friend, his name was John Sanchez, who later on became he worked for Columbus Studios as a makeup artist. Very good makeup artist. So even before he became that, he actually did my makeup and hair and dressed me. So I went to this little bar called the Orange Ogre and I did my little thing. And as luck would have it, you can never write these things, but it just happened. In the audience were members of a traveling group. They did theater in the round. And one of the people there at this event, this drag show I was in, his name was, he was there, Sterling Holloway, who I didn't know who he was. Sterling Holloway actually is the voice of Jiminy Cricket.
Oh, was it
Jiminy Cricket. He did it for Walt Disney. He was in the audience, and I didn't know who he was. He was a man that looked like Harper Marx. He had wild hair, and I could see him when I was performing, singing, and whatever I was doing. I could see this man with white hair, That was Sterling Holloway. Anyway, I got through with my set, went backstage, and he followed me. I said, oh dear. I don't do old men. And now I'm one. So anyway, he followed me. He said, Jesse, my name is Sterling Holloway. Says, and he asked me, have you ever heard of Pinocchios? I said, oh sure, the puppet? I thought you meant Pinocchio. He said, no. It's the nightclub in San Francisco. It's female impersonation. He said, you're good enough. You could work there. I'm 17 years old. What the hell do I know? At that time. And anyway, he said, my agent represents one of the artists at Pinocchio's. Here's his card. Call him and he'll set you up for an audition. So I did. And so with a borrowed wig and dress, I went down there and auditioned. They hired me on the spot. However, I was only 17. Yeah, I had to be 18 at that time. You know, because it was a nightclub, no dinner, no food, nothing, just a strictly a liquor nightclub with entertainment. So I bided my time, went back, and I started working there as an entertainer. But this agent was very good. He gave me an exclusive contract where I could perform at Pinocchio's, but I also I could entertain at other bars at my request or at my will. All the other performers could not do that. They were obligated just to work at that one club. I was pretty free, could do other things. So that was great. And performing there, you know, gave me strength as a performer to, when I came back to Fresno, you know, my performance was a way to raise money for the community, to raise money for the good of the community at large. So I used my performance skills to raise money. I didn't get paid anymore, but I was raising money for others, and that was gratifying. That's my little story.
Eldonia?
Well, I started here in Fresno at the Red Robin, which was by the circle there. That's where I met Empress Jessie.
Who?
I had just turned 21, and I had heard about the Red Robin, and I went in there and I talked to the manager, and I asked him if I could perform. I wanted to perform, and I already knew what I was going to do, La Bamba. And I've always, ever since I can remember that I was little, I always liked music. I liked to entertain. I would hear the radio, and I would get a comb and pretend it was a microphone, and I would entertain my little self. But the first time that I entertained at the Red Robin, it wasn't La Bamba, because earlier that day we rehearsed all the performers that were supposed to rehearse. And then that evening when we got there to do the show, they had taken the sound system and the records, because at that time it was 45 records. So I had to come up with something, you know. So I did Elvis called Clam Bake, you know. And I was okay, but I was upset. I was really angry. I was upset because I didn't have my, you know, the original music I was supposed to do. So the second time I performed, I did La Bamba, and that was a hit. So there was a big audience there. I enjoyed it. Did you ever see me do La Bamba, Jessie?
Many
There.
times.
But they're at the Red Robin the first time. Yeah, and the manager was happy with me, so I was a regular performer at the Red Robin. And then when the Girl of the Golden West came along, that's where I really got to know Jessie, because we did, you know, shows there, you know, and we did a lot of Broadway shows, and it was fun. And then I did different entertainers, because I wasn't sure where I wanted to be at, you know, until I came across Tom Jones, and then that was my specialty. But I've always loved entertaining. I've entertained in Baltimore, Maryland, and New Jersey, and up and down the state, and I've got to meet some terrific professional female impersonators that would perform all over the world. And my favorite one was Charles Pierce. He was an actor and a performer, and Jessie took the autograph from me. But you know, I've always loved performing, and whenever I can today, you know, I perform whenever I'm asked, you know, so it's in my blood. I love it, and I like to think myself as an excellent male impersonator, drag king, performer.
So for those who then reign and who aren't that much into performing, Emperor Christopher, how has that been an experience for you, having to perform?
It's nerve-wracking. It's pushed me out of my box. I always overthink and overanalyze. My Empress always tells me I'm too much in my head, and I need to stop that. But I see how polished the empresses are from our community and out of the other realms. And I see some of the emperors and their polished look. I see people within our own community, Zane Anthony, Reggie Grahava, Claudia Maximus Orgasmo. I see how polished and entertaining they are. Zach Powerhouse. They all have their own unique ability. And that was one thing I had to really overcome when I decided to be emperor. And when Venus and I talked about where I'm gonna run, are you gonna run, are you gonna run? I said, I will be the businessman, I will be doing all the footwork and the legwork, you do the entertaining. And so I'm thankful she's in that role because she does the entertaining, but there are times that I have to step up. And it's like, oh, what am I gonna do? And it's pushed me out of my comfort zone, but it's been a good push. And the time that I have performed, I've enjoyed it. I always try to find a song that resonates with me, that connects with me, that there's a story behind it as to why I'm doing it. And in the end, it's all about having fun. That's all that matters.
So I think it's safe to say, and maybe I'm very bold, that the courts, it's all about the empresses. I mean, Eltania's shaking. So, as an empress, like, how has that been for you of fitting into, a legacy of empresses before you? And talk a bit about how this experience has been for you.
It's been a great experience, and the love and support I've been getting from past empresses has been crazy. Like Tiffany, since when it was rumored that I was gonna run, I remember she came and had a conversation with me backstage about how I had her support and everything, and it's been like that with other empresses. Like Miss Nell recently made a dress for me as a gift that I wore to Albuquerque. A bunch of my friends were past empresses that I'm really close, like Victoria, Melody, Malia, and Phyllis. And then I have their support all the time. Like they're there for me. Victoria sometimes doesn't want to go to events, and I'm like, I'm empress because of you. You forced me to write. You're gonna be there. But yeah, the love that I've gotten from empresses and emperors as well has been very well, and that's why I love it. And it's made me more comfortable in doing it, because sometimes I am doubting myself. I'm like, am I doing enough? Am I doing a good job? But then they're there to reassure me that I am, so it's nice.
So
I just want to add, she
yeah.
talked about having support of emperors and empresses. She's referring to our realms, emperors and empresses, past monarchs. But she and I both also have the support of monarchs, past monarchs from outside of Fresno.
Mm-hmm.
When we go travel, I mean, we're treated like royalty, just as we were part of their own community, and their people reach out to us, and they're always, I know for me, they're always sending me messages. How are you doing? What do you need? Are you breathing? Are you taking care of yourself? So they're constantly checking on us during our reign and giving us that support. So that support is not just here within our own community, but throughout whenever we travel, wherever we travel.
Mm-hmm.
You just perfectly segued to my next question. So thank you, Christopher. Because the one thing I wanted to ask, I'm going to first ask you, Jesse, because you mentioned that, part of your motivation about here was to also help LGBTQ people, particularly gay people who weren't finding support. And I want to talk to you about the family that the courts provide. Because I think, and I try to explain it to my colleagues who aren't familiar with the courts, they're not, I'm like, think of it as a family. You fight, you love, but if anybody talks bad about you, we're coming for you. And so I'd just love to talk to you first, Jesse, about how the courts have become or have created within it a family for many people who need that.
Well, you're right. When you belong to an organization such as the Dove Court de Fresno, it is a family. I've known, we're in year 50. So if you multiply 50 times 2, that's 100 people. But then they also have other friends and other families, other court members that incorporate into our court. So you do become a family, extended family, you know. So and like I said, regular families, you have disagreements, you have fights, you know, and a bunch of stuff, especially on the internet, you know. Thank God I'm not on the internet, you know. But everyone on the internet tells me things that are being said, ugly things, and this and that, you know. But the thing is, you know, it's also, they said, well, it's freedom of speech, you know. All this negativity out there. Coming up 50 years ago in the court system, we never had internet, we never had Google, we had none of that. I was lucky to have a piece of paper and a pen, you know what I mean? A phone was a phone that was on the wall, you know, you can pick it up and dial it, gone. But the family, you know, it is a family. You take the good and you embrace the good and you put the bad as much out of your system as you can. Just like a true family, you know, because we're all akin to each other, you know. Like I told you earlier, there's some empresses that I'm not close to, you know, but the thing is, I do thank them profoundly for giving a year of their lives to me, to the court that I started so many years ago. So, like I said, that's the ultimate respect I can give them, you know, because it takes a year out of their lives, because they didn't have to do it, you know. And somebody mentioned how expensive it is. You know, early on, you know, when I started the court, you know, you can do this, but we're not going to fund you. We're not going to buy the beautiful costumes or the expensive hair, all the stuff that goes with it. It's on your own. It's your own dime. I said, this organization is here to make money for the other people. Another thing about my Imperial Court in Fresno is the fact that because we're the oldest LGBTQ organization in Fresno and probably the Central Valley, I'm sure, maybe in California, I'm not quite sure. This particular Dove Court has also given birth to other organizations, such as the, years back, we had something called GUS, which stands for Gay United Services. We gave birth to that. It came out of the Dove Court. And as I did it, but the talented members within the court stepped out of the Dove Court and created this. They also created the Valley AIDS team, you know. It came out of the Dove Court. So this mother organization gave birth to these other people, these other organizations. That I'm very proud of, that we actually extended beyond the fun and the games to raise money for our community, you know. And the drag aspect of it is such that it makes it fun for the drag personas and the people that are involved in the court. It's their outlet. The men, the emperors, you know, even if they're actually born a woman or born a man, you know, it gives them the role to fill the masculinity, the handsomeness of the court, and the beautiful masculine faces, as opposed to the drag, which you try to be as pretty as possible. So they kind of balance each other, you know. So to me, there's no competition between an emperor and empress. To me, they're the same. You're right, the empresses, because they're gowned so beautifully, you know, the glitter and the sequins and the furs and whatever, you know, they become more visible. But the sad man behind the empresses is where I wish I had had an emperor the first year, but I chose not to have one. But now if you ask me, says, if I could have somebody like Chris as my emperor, or I said, that would be so great, so awesome. I said, you do the legwork, I'll be the pretty face. It was hard being the empress, or the sole one, you know, to carry the whole burden. But, what was the question?
About family.
About family.
Family, well, I answered that. Family to me is important, like I said, just to say that, we're all family and we all get along. I wish I could say that we don't. It's just like family. You have your ups and downs. Lately it's been more downs, but hey, I have an emperor and empress I'm very proud of right now, so to me that's family, that's love to me, you know. Okay, moving on.
Thank you. Chris or Venus, would you like to say anything about family and the court? How do you feel like right now, as like kind of Mama Bear, Papa Bear right now as Emperor and Empress. Maybe that's not the correct term.
I don't feel like I'm a mama bear or papa bear. I think for me, my goal is to help foster a passion for the court within our court members so that it's sustained after we step down. But being involved, it is a big family. I remember being a court member and having a lot of my friends that were past monarchs, they refer to each other as brother, sister. Like, that's so weird. Why do you guys say that? That's so dumb. And now I'm doing it. Like, it just happened. And I have my queen mother here in Fresno, but my last name is Tu. I took that name when I knew I was going to get more involved in the court and step up eventually from Lala Tu in San Diego, past Empress. And I tell everybody, she's my mother. And my family was taken aback, like, what do you mean she's your mother? Mom's dead, and like this and that. Like, okay, there's this thing in the drag world that are families, and Lala is just, she's my mother, but she's also like a sister. She's always checking in on me, and all the connections we made in the court and traveling, I would never thought that it would be, I would have that feeling of such a close-knit family. And I'm glad I do, because when I talk to them, it's like, okay, there's a reason why I'm in this, when there are days where I'm like, I just want to throw it all out the window. But as Jesse said, sometimes families, we get along, and sometimes we don't, and you just move forward. And you just have to pick your battles. So I don't see us as Mama Bear or Papa Bear. I see us as we're the leaders for the moment, and we're fostering passion and growth in the community and in our organization for the future. How do you feel from this?
Same way. It's because now, like, even last night I was at the bar talking to someone else, like, I see you as a future emperor. I'm like, you need to do it, even though they're like, no. I was like, no, you need to. But because now you start looking at it, I'm like, we're gonna step down, we're going into the 50. I'm like, who's the future? Who's next? And I feel like that's the lever, like, with the people like in our team right now that we've been working with some of them, I'm like, when are they, like, you guys are gonna step up next. It's your guys' turn after us. So now it's nice to be able to say that and be like, we're leading the way. We're ending the 40th, but we're gonna start with the 50th. So now I'm like, maybe someone that's in our top 5 right now, or maybe just someone who has the title, I'm like, they're the next emperor and empress, and it's nice to see. And like, some of them, like, they're like, so yeah, so last night I was talking to someone, and we'll see when they become emperor.
I have some candidates I want.
Yes.
I've been vocal about that. Anyway, so I would like to also pose this question to you, Aldana, especially in regards to, and this also will go to Jesse as well, about how much, just learning about the history of the courts, especially in the 1980s and the early 90s, during the HIV/AIDS crisis, like how much sort of amazing sort of survival and support the courts gave to its members. And I'd just like to sort of first start with Aldana about how the courts, how you and your court work to provide, to support individuals in the community who were suffering at the time.
Well, in Visalia, I recall, I can remember, there was like Hope Incorporated needed a food drive, and they needed money because they home AIDS patients. And there was a couple of AIDS patients that were here in the hospital in Fresno, which I came to visit. And I could not understand them because they were so sick, you know, they would just make a noise. But later when they felt better and they could speak and they were out of the hospital, they told me, you know, thank you, you know, you were there for me. And they said, I know you didn't understand what I was saying, but I knew what you were saying. And they said, we appreciate you and the court. And whatever fundraising we had, we gave that money to Hope Incorporated and then other organizations which I don't remember, that was so many years ago, and I'm gonna be 78 years old in 2 weeks. So, you know, my memory's starting to slip away, but the Sequoia Empire did a lot locally. We really did. And I think in my 4th reign, Emperor III Glenn, he gave us the report, the financial report for the year. And back then, I think he said we had given $10,000 in charities, and he said that was pretty damn good, you know. So, but locally, I really can't tell you every time how much we gave, you know, but we did contribute a lot, and mostly to Hope Incorporated and other organizations. And I know a community church there too, which I have letters from them of appreciation. But we did all we could, you know, and the community that came out, because when I first got there, the community was small. I didn't know that there was a gay community there until, you know, we started the court, and they came out of the woodwork. And we did all we could, you know, and like I said, the first 12 years of the court was good and was strong. And after that, it just started slipping away. I don't know why or how. But when I was Emperor 14, which I didn't want to be emperor again, but the 2 emperors that really cared about the court and wanted it to continue was Emperor 12 Steve and Emperor 10, 6, 7 Joey. That's all. I know he has more numbers, but I can't remember them all. But you know, they encouraged me to take the title of Emperor 14. They said, we'll do the traveling, just take the title so that we can keep going. And then at that time I was working, when I became Emperor 14, I worked with Bakersfield, try to get them to get the court going, which they had an Emperor and Empress 15. But then after that, I don't know what happened. But I am sad about that, and I'm sorry that it didn't continue on. But when the Sequoia Empire was active in Visalia all those years, they did all they could to make the best of it.
You made an amazing legacy there. Don't ever say sorry. It was brilliant when it was, and it still has legacy here.
Thank you.
So for you, Jesse, could you share a little bit about how the courts have helped communities in need, particularly with even in members of the court? I was talking about HIV/AIDS, but we could talk about other things, but I would just love to talk about how the court has helped, particularly our LGBTQ community, especially those in really high need.
Well, since year 1, like I said, we try to raise money for the community at large, right? When the 80s came along and the onslaught of AIDS was so prevalent, that's when the Valley AIDS team that came out of the Dove Court really stepped up to the bat and helped people in dire need. All of us here have lost friends to AIDS, and all the devastation it brought to all of us. By the mercy of God, I'm still here, right? But, the thing about it is this, every year, with the exception of 1 year in the 50 years of our history, we were fortunate enough to give out money to charities, different charities, not only AIDS patients or other, but this year, the 48th reign, which will be giving out their money on the 8th of this month, right, at the Ducal Ball. And I'm not quite sure the numbers, but isn't it close to $40,000, Chris?
Almost, I want to say it's around 37, a little over $37,000.
$37 is a grant that we don't expect payments, we just give it out to charities. And this year, I don't know exactly who they're giving it out to, but there's, they go online, they have to be 501c3 charitable nonprofits, and we give out the money. Some of them have underlying gay organizations. They don't have to be, that's not a prerequisite. You know, over the years, we have given money out to Valley Children's Hospital, the Cancer Fund, Red Cross, all kinds of things, Friendship Center for the Blind, all kinds of charities that we have given money to. And part of the questions that they're going to ask, or one of the questions they asked Christopher is how much money the court has raised, our court, my court, the Dove Court has raised in 50 years of fundraising. And I think just by guessing, we came out to the amount of $1,500,000, right? $1.5 million that we've given out in 50 years. That's a lot of money, you know. Why they did not contribute to my fund, I don't know. I didn't qualify.
Well, I, for one, as a board member of an organization that very much survived on the donations of the court, Trans-Emotion, I cannot thank you enough for that. Like, for many years, Trans-Emotion, we survived on the grant that the IDC gave us. So, like, there's the proof right there for us. For Chris and Venus, you talked about how you want to get more people involved or get also current members involved. How do you think about survival of the courts, especially for getting younger generations involved? Like, how are you thinking about it? How do you want to approach it?
For me, I really think the court now is at a time of change. It's a time where we need to embrace change and do things differently. We can't keep relying on drag shows at a bar. We have to think outside the box and be willing to go with that change. We also have to think we are a huge realm. Not everything is Fresno. We need to do a better job of reaching out and holding events in Visalia, in Bakersfield, in Hanford, in Madera, so that those people come to and support the organization. There's a lot of missed financial opportunities for that. In our communities, such in the community I live in, Visalia, I mean, I'm so proud that we had a court back then, but currently our political society is fighting back at things, and Visalia is the last bastion of the Bible Belt within the Central Valley, and we're dealing with some really hateful, negative things right now, and we need an organization like the court. Thank goodness we have the source down there to keep things going, but we need an organization like that, like the court, to get the youth involved, for the youth to have a safe place to be involved and be a part of. And it's hard when, as an reigning emperor, you have all these duties and responsibilities, and then what more are you going to add to your plate, and what are you going to take off, or, okay, I'm going to push this to let these people do, but I'm going to put my focus here. And my one thing that I've always said when I started getting involved, when I heard about they give money out at the end of the reign, like, oh, well, that's nice, and I'm like, I'm giving so much money to this organization, but you guys are keeping all the money in Fresno. What about Visalia? There are nonprofits in Visalia or Bakersfield that could benefit from this. So my goal, the more I got involved, was once we started accepting applications, I hit up nonprofits, said, hey, there's some money available here. All you gotta do is fill this out, and it's free money. Just what's the worst they can do? Say no. And so we started giving money to organizations in Tulare County and Bakersfield. It's like, if we want people to come and support us, we need to give back to them as well. But I know Venus has a great connection with a lot of younger people who go to the bars, and that's a great start, but we also need to work within our community to connect with our younger population that are not age appropriate to be going to bars. Like our current junior trans queen, she's phenomenal. Dahlia, she's awesome, but she can't go to any of our events because they're all at bars. So we need to be holding events that are youth friendly, just like EOC had the night out, Pride Night back in July. But there are kids out there on that stage performing. performing. They were thriving. They had a free drag thing here for them to get ready and to try on clothes, and they were loving it. And that's what we need to do to develop a passion and a desire from the younger generation to carry this forward. That's how I think. But it's also, again, thinking outside the box, and not everyone wants to go outside that box. And that's the hard part of Emperor reigning, is motivating people to go with you outside that box. Venus?
He answered it perfectly. Can't add anything to it.
Perfect. Okay, so I just want to leave it open to the audience here. Are there any questions that you would like to ask our panelists?
I've got a question. So, given what drag has become, I mean, historically drag was rebellious, it was revolutionary, and now it's about as mainstream as it can get with RuPaul and everything, which is great, but do you feel that it has an effect on the political statement that drag used to be, probably best for Jesse and Aldana? Or do you feel it's a great thing, everybody's doing drag now, and
Aldana, you have opinions about this. So
Yeah, you know,
don't be shy.
the drag for the females, impersonators, whatever you want to call them, or, you know, it's always about them, but you never hear about like me, you know, the drag king here. You don't hear about us. There's a handful of us, and there would be more out there if they were encouraged, you know, like I saw a commercial yesterday, because this is gay month, and they're showing commercials about gays, and I told Lisa, you're gonna see a lot of gay commercials, but you notice it's all men, you don't see the lesbians on there, you know? I mean, I thought we were all equal here, and I feel that we're not.
And that's been a historical battle, gay men and lesbians,
Yeah.
and which we were talking about the AIDS crisis before, and that highlighted the need for women and gay men to come together, because women during the AIDS crisis took care of a lot of men that were sick. So,
Yes.
So you don't feel like we've conquered that yet?
No.
Yeah.
I still feel like we're on the sideline all the time.
Yeah.
You know, but the males are out there, whether you wear a dress or not, you know, it's all about them, you know. But what about us? You know, what about me? I'm a lesbian, you know, yeah, I like to dress up, you know, I'm not saying, you know, I'm completely male, but I feel comfortable the way I am, you know, with my hair short and what I wear. But I'm always on the sideline, even as an entertainer, you know. The female impersonator gets more credit, you know, and than a lesbian that's, you know, being a male impersonator.
So do you feel drag encompasses everything? Like, for instance, a man performing as a man in a costume of some kind, is that drag to you? Because we had this conversation at the Circle years ago about whether a female could perform in drag. Was that technically drag? And a lot of the drag community said that's not drag. You have to be
Well, you
the
know,
opposite.
That doesn't bother me. That doesn't bother me. You know, what bothers me is that, say for example, I'm entertaining, and then a drag queen comes and entertains, you know, and then at the end of the show, you know, they say more about the drag queen than they do about the drag king. You know, we're always on the sideline, you know, and we don't get equal recognition, I feel, you know. I'm sorry if it looks like I have a chip on my shoulder on that, but it's always been like that.
No, it's completely understandable.
And I consider myself an excellent performer, and yet I won't be asked to perform because I'm a lesbian.
Okay.
But they'll ask all the
Sure.
queens, you
Well,
know?
my question was going to be about the progression of drag from the days of you and I, Jess. I was in the nightclub business for 35 years, started in 1978, 79 when I was underage, and drag back then was separated into two categories. There was your female impersonation, which you did at Finocchio's, and then there was what was considered drag. And drag was people that you obviously could tell were a man in a dress, but he had the massive hair, the outrageous makeup, the shiny jewelry, the big country western ball gowns, and all they did was mimic. It was not impersonation, it was like a tribute to somebody they loved. Dolly Parton, Patsy Cline, Loretta Lynn, mostly country at that time.
Yes.
Then it started to progress into popular music, and the style changed, and then it progressed into more back into a female impersonation, where drag queens, in my opinion today, are dressing as a pop star or a current trending thing, designing, drawing, doing their hair their own way, their face their own way, and just lip syncing to a song. Not just lip syncing, because it's a talent. Trust me, I believe it's a talent 100%. But it's more like they're just trying to impersonate their sister or their cousin or something. There's no comedy in drag anymore like there used to be. You mentioned Charles Pierce. You mentioned Jimmy James. You know, the old drag queens that used to do the comedy bits in between or perform a number that was comedic. And it changes. And then they started with the drag kings. We had a drag king show here in Fresno at our bar, and hardly anybody would come to it. And we couldn't understand why, because they were putting the same effort into it that the drag queens were putting into their show, but it just wasn't being received even within the community of women.
But they're, okay,
So that's
There's-
something that I've never understood.
okay, but there's like Jessie. Jessie gets into character,
Mm-hmm.
okay? When I do my numbers too, I get into character. I mean, you can perform, you can be a performer, but are you really a performer? I mean, you have to get really into it. You gotta be outside of you. When I'm performing.
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah, but not everybody's the same in entertaining. And then also, a lot of them, they really don't stay in sync with their lip syncing.
Well, that's always been an argument for drag queens forever, honey. Why do you think they have the phrase rumplemints and watermelon?
You know?
You know, that's just part of it. But what I'm saying is, you know, we tried to do a male impersonation drag king show. The Fresbians hosted it, we put it on at the club, and it wasn't supported by the community of women. And that really bothered me because we had Zane Anthony performing. We had people who were transitioning, we had people that weren't transitioning, but I just never understood why that wasn't supported, and as much from the drag queen community as well. There were not a lot of drag queens that would attend those shows, and that speaks to the division, like you say. When you have a group that becomes a family, there are differences.
Well,
And people argue, and then they make up, and, you know, but it's...
let me know next time you're gonna have the drag king show.
Oh, honey, I'm out of the
And I'll
business.
tell you what.
I'm out of the
well,
business now, I
I
just
would
think
tell you
about
what's
it.
wrong, I would tell you exactly what was wrong with it, you know?
But I think, you know, it gets to the point of, like, particularly you, Jesse and Aldana, is that when you started doing performing, you really perform the characters. Like, you are Barbara. My God, Jesse, you are Barbara still.
Well, you have to remember one thing, you know, I listened to what Elsie had to say, and Don, I'm sorry, and Chris, and James here. A drag to me is, I say this, it's a performance, okay? I was lucky enough to perform in a union house where everybody had to be professional. The lighting were professional, the musicians, we had a band. You know, one of the things that you had to be capable of when you got hired for Pinocchio's, you mime, lip sync was frowned upon. You either had to sing live, dance, or play an instrument. Those were the prerequisites, okay? Mime, to me, lip sync, I had to learn because I didn't know what that was, you know. But now it's prevalent, okay? And you're right, it's a talent in its own kind, you know. Elsie does an excellent lip sync, you know. Excellent, you know. The thing is about she seems to be perturbed by the fact that she doesn't get the same kind of recognition as a male impersonator. The thing is this, you know, and you do excellent performing. The fact that you feel you're not accepted, I think you're terribly wrong about that, Elsie. You are accepted, you know. Maybe not to the extent that, say, some flamboyant queen that does impersonation, or in the present specter of a drag queen, like you say, with the overpainted face and the big bouffant hair, you know. There's entertainers like me that can do a character like you do, Tom Jones. There's a drag queen that could pantomime to any record, not paying any kind of allegiance to the person that's singing a song, but rather say like their Aunt Margaret or their Uncle Charlie, you know. That's a little different right there to me. You know, that doesn't show any kind of effort. You know, the fact that they might be excellent lip syncers, and that's a talent, like I said, on its own. You know, but the thing is, Elsie, you shouldn't feel that way. The lesbians that do drag kings, aren't accepted. Yes, they are accepted. Mm-hmm. You know, the drawing card is this. You know. Whenever you put a queen that does impersonation, or even a drag queen that does the bizarre makeup and stuff, they will draw more attention than a lesbian would. Not because you don't have any talent, that is just a natural attraction of the audience. Attracted to the beauty or the flamboyance,
The
the
bright and
glitter,
shiny,
the brightness, the
attract.
shiny.
Just as with Christopher, and when he's performing, there's more attention paid on Venus, because Venus is this vision, and Christopher is wearing a shirt and a tie and maybe a vest or a jacket,
James, you
and
don't
he's
know
lip
if he's a
syncing to
vision
a male
or
song.
not.
I'm sorry.
I'm not a
I'm
vision.
sorry?
I'm not a vision, trust me.
No, he's a vision as well, but he
I believe it's
doesn't,
equal vision for everyone.
he doesn't show up, and that's what Jesse is saying. You're looking at two things. You're looking at a really bright, shiny object, and you're looking at a standard vision of what people think of when they think of a man. So they're going to be drawn to the shiny and bright, naturally.
We do have a drag king that is very involved in the court, Maximus. Okay. I've watched the audience. Maximus worked his tail off to put a production together, and he is very unique and entertaining. But as Jesse said earlier, he can be in the same show with others, and they respond to him, and the audience likes him, but they gravitate towards the drag persona. And Claudia Maximus is there, and he's recognized, but and that's the nature of the beast in our community and our society.
Yeah.
We have time for one more, so Tiff, you go.
I,
Speaking of vision,
okay, when Jesse and I went to New York in March, I was really confused because the West Coast, the men are men, and they still look at the Empress as the flamboyant one, and the men are in suits and tuxes or in leather. The East Coast, it's completely different. It's the men who's in the sequins and the rhinestones, and there's no leather at coronations. The leather is completely separate, and the men are in their mantles, and it was really different. I had to learn that the East Coast, the men are the flamboyant ones at coronations.
I think every realm, every court is operated differently, and I've noticed that too. That there are some realms that the emperors are just as flamboyant, if not more, in their behaviors and in their looks than the empresses are, and that's just the nature of that realm and how they've operated. And then there's some realms that they're just the average Joe like me. That I mean, I'll put on a ring, a flashy ring. I bought one last weekend. I bought an earring and ring because I really like the ring. because it was black and we were black and white. I wore it for that event. I said, okay, you're Venus and Jordan now. I don't need it anymore. And so I mean, you get into the flash and the glitz over time, but it's like, I'm just an average Joe. But I go to these coronations out of town, and the emperors are so, all this bling and flash and glamour and glitz. It's like, oh my God, that's just too much for me. But it depends on where you're at. But
I feel like in the last few years, the emperors have been stepping it up, or not just emperors, just men in general. You go to a coronation, they're all wearing jewelry now, like big jewelry. Usually, you would only see the drag queens with jewelry. You see them now with the little things, the mantles, and then they have it's not a plain blazer no more. It's not a black. It's like you had a white blazer the other day, but it had rhinestones on it, and so they're all stepping it up. They don't want to be outshined by the empresses and the drag queens no more. So
no, and I have past our Imperial family, past empresses who they're willing to make my outfits for me because they want me to look great out there. Like,
They're
I
we need
look
to help
great.
you.
So, thank you.
It's called theater.
Yeah.
Costuming,
It's a reflection of personality.
Exactly, and I give high fives to all the men that attend coronations on emperor and empresses, but I mean emperors only. It's a reflection of their own personality. Bring it up. You want to wear a secret coat, wear it.
The whole point of drag originally was to become someone you weren't and enable yourself to have an outward personality completely different, because when I was first going out to bars, I knew drag queens that when I would see them out of face and out of drag, I would think, this man's an accountant. This man is a CPA. He's so boring. But when they put the clothing on, when they put the makeup on, when they put the hair on, and that light came on, it was a totally different person. And I know, Jesse, you might remember, Steve, you'll remember, at Frank's funeral, that Ed made the comment that he had known Frank as Celeste for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then when Frank first appeared in leather at a bar and walked up to Ed to say hi, Ed had no idea who he was. And Ed literally talked to him and then said, I don't know who you are. And Frank looked at him and said, I'm Celeste. And that's what drag did for him and for so many others. It brought out this other side of you. And I sometimes I don't see that anymore. I see just a harder concentration to try to be an extension, a female extension of what you are in every day, as opposed to bringing this larger-than-life personality to a stage. And that's what I think a lot of people miss about drag right now, is that it used to have somebody that you would go and say, I can't wait to see her because she's great. And now, a lot of times, and personally, because I haven't seen a show for a couple of years, but it's what I hear is people say it's the same thing over and over, same thing. No different, no exaggeration, no change. And that's the metamorphosis that it goes through.
But I think the thing about that is how Chris brought it up, how drag is so mainstream now, which a lot of people go to shows and they're expecting like RuPaul stuff. Like, oh, so sometimes like, some of us are on budgets. We can't afford RuPaul costumes.
Understandable.
Some of us aren't going to do the shablans, the splits, and all that. And that's what people are expecting now. So sometimes people are like, "Oh, I'm a fan of drag." No, you're a fan of Drag Race.
You're a fan. You're a fan of the performance.
Yes, it's like.
And whereas we're more of the, I want the talent, I want the comedy, I want the presentation. I don't care about doing death drops.
Yeah.
For God's sake, Shangela broke her ankle.
I do, I want to see death drops.
Yeah, no, a lot of people. And
Right.
it's funny that you brought it up. Like last night, I did a show at Splash, and then it had a little bit of everything. Like there's a staph infection. She did a nun routine, so she brought the comedy. She did her mix for from Sister Act. I'm one of those queens that my best friend likes to say that I park and bark, because I'm good. I'm not really a dancer, but give me a good ballad. Last night I did Listen by Beyonce. So I came out in my beautiful
What does park and
gown.
bark mean?
Stand
I
still
walk
and
up,
perform.
Just stand there
I
and
park,
perform.
and I just bark the song out.
Okay, I like that.
And that's perfect. That's,
Yes.
you know, But what the evolution, and I don't know if you've been watching, we started watching this show, RuPaul's Celebrity Drag Race, okay, where it's celebrities doing drag.
Yes.
The one thing I didn't like about that, they have a couple women on it, and they're performing as women. I'm like, take those women, dress them as men, and have them perform that way. Do what drag originally
But
was.
then women are allowed to do drag, but they're called folk queens.
Yeah, yeah.
So
But, and then the guys that were doing it now seem to be doing more of what we used to call traditional, you know, over the top, makeup hair,
It's a camp drag.
camp drag without the mustache or the, you know, beard, but it was fun, and you could see them really enjoying themselves. And then you saw the host saying, oh my God, what a difference. You could see you're doing what we used to do. And now it's all about trying to get onto the RuPaul shows and be mainstream and be accepted. And
So-
that's not what we're to do.
So you've convinced us that we need to have another panel strictly on drag. Okay, so next, like, let's write this down, the next panel, not for this series, but following panels on drag, because I think we have some really good conversations here. But because of time, I'm going to cut James off. But I want to just like sincerely thank all of you on this panel. Empress Jessie, Empress Venus, Emperor Aldania, Emperor Christopher. Thank you for coming, thank you for sharing, thank you for the service that you do for our community. I told you again how we have benefited at Transemotion. I also know the mentorship that you've given to so many people here. And that I think is the most beautiful thing about the courts. And I want more people to know about that. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.